monthly slate of film releases just keeps getting better. Hey everyone, welcome to Cinema, where we focus on a film. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema, and let me know down in the comments what films you watched in April 2024, how you would rank them from your least favorite to your favorite, and what I have been missing out this year thus far, films that I should be checking out before the end of the year, and we're going to be ranking my top 11 that I have saw this past month. And make sure to like this video if you enjoy it, subscribe if you're already to join in this film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema altogether. But going right into number 11, we have Unsung Hero, one that unfortunately as a Christian I really was looking forward to see something that was inspiring and something around the realm of the unsung hero that is going about for King and Country the band, but it is not a biopic of that taste, and it has so many distorted and convoluted storylines where you're getting so much hope and so much into the inspirational lean of what this film is headed for, but unfortunately becomes less inspirational for the fact that it becomes so hopeful that it dismisses a lot of the drama-filled moments, misses the mark on the expression of what you're leading into when showing the praise toward God in what you're asking for the events to unfold as. And while many of the events may be true to the retrospect of the story, unfortunately the narrative feels mismatched to what it was actually aiming for. And coming at number 10, we have The Greatest Hits, a Hulu release that I did enjoy the retrospect to the ideas that this film was headed for, but it really missed the mark on the romance and chemistry on the screen. Unfortunately, didn't match the taste that I had going for it. It has a convoluted idea for what you're getting and the synopsis of going after these greatest hits that takes this girl back in time to different events with her girlfriend, dealing a little bit with grief, but never going all in on some of its retrospect to the ideas, what it ultimately wants you to feel. And while it does work for some, by the good chemistry that it plays out on screen, it never really connected with me in the way that I would like it to. And coming in at number 9, we have The First Omen. Now, unfortunately, for me, I watched this a few days after watching Abigail from March, and this one is way too similar to that retrospect of the ideas that is going after a nun that is going into this church, that's going about different ideas. And while it's a decent and good Omen movie on its own thing as a prequel to the rest of the franchise, it really threw me off and threw me in for a loop for rewatching pretty much the exact same storyline play out with an opposite ending. And ultimately, both films pulled off a lull that I wasn't too engaged throughout certain scenes because of the way they were progressing. I'm not always into that idea of how you're pulling off these nuns, the culture, and going opposite of their culture by pulling off these ideas with trying to put in the demon inside of her and play the Christ sort of game where you bring the Antichrist into the world in order to end the world as they know it. So just the general idea, it's a good Omen film, but not one that clicked right with me in the right way. And coming in number 8, we have Rebel Moon, the Scargiver. Now, I am a decent fan of what we got in the first Rebel Moon, and it led up to a lot of questions that could have been for an epic battle of the proportions that it has leading up for it, with all the characters that it invents. But unfortunately, Zack Snyder's vision doesn't fall through at its fullest, at least with the cut that Netflix put out thus far. And unfortunately, the characters just get way underdeveloped. The events and slow motion just doesn't do too much an effect for the action as a whole that really underperforms the ideas and performances that even as a sci-fi fan that enjoys the world building and cultures that they begin to set up with this, it still feels like a film that's intentionally hiding this sight of what it's actually leading up to if there was more films to the future, but on its own just doesn't hit the right marks. Going at number 7, we have Humane from Caitlin Cronenberg, another Cronenberg into the family business that pulled off a decent good feature for her first run, and I did enjoy the general marks, the general mystery behind what's going to happen. I didn't see any trailers to see if any of those would have spoiled the events, but in the retrospect of what I know, there's some fun characters throughout, and there's ideas that do good to what they perform and how they end up, but there's some things with the family where you're just not too familiar with their relationship to begin with, to understand fully well their motives of how they're supposed to pick a murder, of who they're gonna kill when they're signing up for this global event that's supposed to save part of the population because of things going out on the outside world with climate change. And unfortunately, with climate change, how they explore that is very underwhelming because you're just really stuck in this one house that works for the tension of the story that is fitting, but you can still have all those questions of what is really going on within this world that we're very likely not going to explore again, and I wouldn't necessarily care to explore again because of how you're just centralizing in on these key characters. And coming in number 6, we have The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare from Guy Ritchie that gives off a good action piece, a good acting and everything throughout. That pulls in a good bit of fun punches within all the characters. There are different tropes and everything throughout. And it's a good setup film for what this ungentlemanly warfare sort of team is setting up to be. But unfortunately, there's a couple characters that are key to the team that it is building up that are separate throughout a majority of the runtime that underperforms on the remarks that it is making for what you're expecting for the story. You definitely see he got a lot more budget that he utilized well to make the war seem more real, at least for the fun aspects to what it's going to, and without being too gritty and too R-rated or anything along those lines. But it still has the fun punches even if it doesn't go all the way with the ideas and characters that it would otherwise develop along the way. And coming in number 5, we have The Long Game, a golf game that can be decent for its own means. Julia Quintana is a great director for what he brings to the sweeping motions of the characters, putting the engagement on the golf game as a whole, creating these Mexican Americans that can't get into this country club until they got the aid of a leader as well as someone that is a part of the country club because of their race and everything that is going on with the racial judgment that doesn't go too hard on its messaging. It's obviously and there, but it develops some characters that go about different side stories that aren't always as engaging as the actual golf game development is. But it still goes about a way that explores the game of golf that is entertaining enough. I know what to get going into it because it's based on a true story. The general vibe you're going after pulls off the right punches to become the right feeling and good vibes type of movie you're expecting. But going to number 4, we have Monkey Man, one that's fun with Indian madness, just the action pieces that are going about across the screen, the bloody nature of the fighting that pulls off great nailing and punches and fighting that goes about in all these different sort of ways that is just entertaining to its extent. It isn't full John Wick mode that I love the nature of what you're going. Certain ideas are familiar. You're not getting too much behind the motives of everything that's going on as a whole, but it's still a fun piece that is good to be had, and one I see myself watching in the near future once it comes out. And coming in number 3, we have Civil War, one from Alex Garland that I love as a director that pulls off something completely unexpected, something you don't know what to expect going into it, which is the nature of the director, and it's following this war photographer and a side photographer that's younger and wanting to look up to this role model as a photographer in the war, and just the ideas and camera movements and tropes that goes about this film explores all these different themes that leads you to not pick a side on why these heroes are fighting, and it's almost an anti-war type of film, while also exploring the good sides and negative aspects to what you're getting into, where these soldiers are killing each other and not necessarily knowing why the war has begun and why they are fighting each other, except for the fact that they are being hunted down themselves. And so it just creates this great environment, extensive scene that is death-breaking with what you get with Jesse Plemons. That scene is really making a mark, and how it ends up at the end just really has a nice finish. Even it's unsatisfactory to a complete picture of what you're getting, it is a great piece of cinema as a whole that I love. And coming in number 2, we have Abigail. Vampire madness to the fullest extent. I knew nothing about it really going into it, didn't even know it was a vampire film, and so getting that surprise later on that a lot of people were spoiled and mentioned were underwhelmed. Based on the film as a whole, I got the true mystery behind this girl just being a ballerina, why they need to this group of criminals that need to capture her, bring her into this house, and stay there for 24 hours, and then realize there's so much more that is going on behind the scenes when they're stuck in there for the night, and the monster is revealed. She doesn't look as much like a vampire than she does a true creature, and that brings a different retrospect to the idea of everything you are offering for this film that was frightening to be had, but it was also action-filled and fun. They gave enough character depth to the characters that you don't love the characters in one sense, but you care enough for the ideas and individuality behind each of them that you kind of can predict general ideas and retrospect to who's gonna survive, who's not, and the general vibe of the film is just a blast to be had, even if it is frightening as a whole. But going into number 1, we have Challengers, a tennis match that is brought to this game that is so eventful, and not only that, but going into this love triangle with different sides pulling different strings, and each one of them pulling a manipulation upon each other to be sour in the note within all of the love and hate you have against each other, and just the event that is pulled off across the screen is so well done by Luca as the director, and what they do for all the camera movements, all the unique tastes that they bring to the screen as a whole. It's a great cinematic experience, one that I want to go into again, and despite its longer runtime than I would have expected for this type of story of love triangle and mixing that with a tennis match, becomes so eventful for the tale that spins off, and it brings it about to be another one that is definitely going to be in the top of my 2024 list at the end of the year. And so that's just my take on all 11 2024 April films that I saw from my leisure to my favorite. Let me know down in the comments below what I missed and how you'd rank the films that you watched this past month, whether it's a lot or a minimal amount, and we can talk about the love of cinema. Make sure to like this video, subscribe if you're already to join in the film culture community. So that's just all. Be sure to do yourself a favor and go watch a movie.